I don't usually talk about mobile emulators, but every once in a while a new mobile emulator comes along that's so awesome that I just can't avoid talking about it. And AetherSX2 is a new PS2 emulator for Android that is still in closed alpha testing right now, but is shown to be very, very promising. AetherSX2 is especially important to the world of PS2 emulation because there really aren't a lot of options for PS2 emulation when it comes to mobile devices. Damon PS2 is one of the only other known PS2 Android emulators, and it honestly seems to be a fairly malicious piece of software, and their devs seem to be pretty scummy if the things that I'm reading online are true. It basically uses code from PCSX2 and tries to profit off of it with an emulator that is heavily monetized, possibly steals user data, and in general is just, it's not a good option, and it's not even a very good emulator. And that's really the only other viable PS2 emulation option on Android until now. AetherSX2's devs seem to be very open and forthcoming about their fledgling emulator, so I'm very confident that this emulator will be a major player in the emulation field in the near future. So with that important information out of the way, let's get right into the nitty-gritty. I just want to start out with a big old scam alert. Just be careful, guys, okay? Because according to the dev, there is no APK or download for AetherSX2 yet. It's still in alpha testing, and it's not available to the public. Don't trust any source you see online saying that they have an APK or download for it, because it is not here yet. Anything you download is probably malicious, it's probably a virus, so just beware and don't download anything fishy. Even though AetherSX2 is not currently available to the general public just yet, there will be an open beta sometime soon, hopefully before the end of the year. So since I don't have access to the emulator yet, you're not going to see footage of the emulator from me, though I certainly will try it out when the open beta comes. You're also not going to get an install or a setup guide just yet, obviously. Instead, I'm mainly going to focus in this video on what makes AetherSX2 so interesting, and go over why I'm very hopeful about it compared to other mobile quote-unquote PS2 emulators. So given how it's in its fledgling state, there isn't a huge amount of information about AetherSX2 right now, given that it is in a closed alpha, but what we do have is very promising. The nice people over at PCSX2 made a blog post about AetherSX2 explaining how it is based on PCSX2's core code and is shown to have very promising performance and compatibility. The folks at PCSX2 were shown an alpha build of the emulator and saw that it had really great performance right off the bat, which is awesome to hear. It appears that the head developer, Talruth, is very forthcoming with information, which is also a really good sign. While in the past, emulators like Damon PS2 appear to basically be like a hostile fork of PCSX2, meaning that it's a piece of software based off of an open source software that has been monetized and used maliciously, AetherSX2 appears to be nothing like Damon PS2 at all, which is once again a great sign, even though they're obviously both based off of PCSX2's core code. It seems that AetherSX2 is a much more legitimate project and a lot more transparent project as well. What's even better is a video released by YouTuber Taki Udon showcasing alpha footage of AetherSX2 running on real hardware, where it can be seen that the emulator does indeed run very well, all things considered. It appears that an open beta is likely to come sometime in the upcoming weeks, so I'm excited to try out some games for myself and see how they run on my phone. Now, given how this is based on core code from PCSX2, which is quite arguably the best PS2 emulator and, in my opinion, probably one of the most stable and feature-rich emulators in general, I'd imagine that AetherSX2 is going to be one hell of an emulator once it does actually release. Of course, there are some challenges to developing a mobile emulator, as the hardware is not as powerful. However, I think given the PS2's advanced age and how good PCSX2 is, AetherSX2 shouldn't have too much of a problem getting things up and running, which you can see from Taki Udon's footage. These games seem to be running pretty well, all things considered. And remember, this emulator is still just in an alpha stage, so I am really pumped for this because it can really only get better from here. Another quick note I want to make about AetherSX2 is that besides the fact that it seems to be based off of very high quality software and seems to have some good devs, it's just really great to see a actual legitimate PS2 emulator coming to Android, because in the past, Damon PS2 is honestly, like I said, it's basically a hostile fork of PCSX2. It is not a good piece of software. It did technically run some games, but it didn't run them very well, and it seemed to just overall be kind of scummy. And even if perhaps the actual piece of software was maybe not the worst thing in the world, the devs are definitely only interested in money. They seem to have been running around trying to get a bunch of trademarks for things that are definitely not theirs. They've been just, I mean, there's pages written about Damon PS2 and about all the kind of shady things going on with it. But unfortunately, it's like in the past, if you wanted to emulate PS2 games on your phone, it was one of the only legitimate options there. Although I say legitimate with air quotes, honestly speaking. So yeah, it's a breath of fresh air to see somebody making a legitimate PS2 emulator for real. And I'm super excited about it because honestly, I don't like having to go through software like Damon PS2, especially because it's really not any good. I suppose maybe it would be at least a consolation prize if at least it was good and it just had greedy devs, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It is just not really a good piece of software at all, and on top of that, the devs are just scummy. So yeah, everybody, keep your eyes peeled for an upcoming open beta of AetherSX2, and make sure to check the Reddit page regularly for updates on the fledgling emulator. It seems that this is really the only legitimate official source of information, so this is probably where I would go for all these updates in the future. And once again, make sure you keep an eye out for scams or anything saying that it's AetherSX2, because according to the devs on Reddit, they don't really have any social media or anything like that, so anything else from other sources is not legit, and be aware of that. Alright, that's going to be it for today, everybody. Make sure to stay tuned, because I'm definitely going to try out AetherSX2 as soon as the beta drops. So make sure to like and subscribe for a beta test video in the near future. Have a good one.